friends, it's Jack,
And Krista.
and we are coming to you today live for a family moment chat.
We are. This is something a little different that Jack and I have been dreaming about, and we thought it would be fun to take a book study that Jack and I are actually studying and going through ourselves and kind of share that live with you. So this is some vulnerable space for sure. But what we're hoping that this will accomplish is that you come alongside us in this study and learn a little bit about yourselves.
Yeah, and so we're going to invite you into all kinds of different ways that you can engage with our discussions, and you can join us with the study of the book. And so we hope that you will accept those and that you will walk alongside this journey with us.
Absolutely. And so we had some discussion about what the purpose of our family chats are. So do you want to share that with them maybe?
Yeah, so the purpose and what we're hoping that you get out of it is that this can be a place that you can that we can walk alongside you as parents as you are parenting your kids and your youth. We know that it's not an easy thing, and there's questions and there's new things that come up every day. So through the discussions that we have, we hope that you can know that we are walking alongside with you. Another thing that we hope that you get from this is that this will really help you connect with other people, and more importantly, it'll help you connect with yourself better.
Absolutely.
You know, the thing that we believe with this study is that the purpose is to help us understand each other better, which in the end can help us understand ourselves better. So when we understand ourselves better, we can then in return understand our kids better, understand other people's kids better. We can understand our teachers better, and that can go to create more, I guess, deeper relationships that we can have.
Absolutely. And so again, the purpose of this is that we're working this in real time in front of you. So we've chosen a book that we really felt like spoke into this season that we've kind of come out of. We're still living in with all the changes from the pandemic and kids and how kids are growing up and kind of the world that we live in these days. And we felt like parentally, from my point of view, having kids and being a parent, and Jack's point of view in Jack's age and kind of how he's grown up in this season, plus with my working with children and youth, we just thought that this would be a really good time to start talking about language. And so we've chosen a book. Jack, you can show them the book.
It's by Brene Brown. It's called Atlas of the Heart, Mapping Meaningful Connection and the Language of Human Experience.
Absolutely. We're working through a workbook. This was not written by written by Brene Brown, but it's a workbook for Atlas of the Heart, and we felt like it had some really good material to kind of guide us through these discussions. And if you don't know Brene Brown is a researcher. She's from the University of Houston, and she's written several books, done a lot of TED Talks. She's got a lot to say. Brene's website actually says this about her, that she's a storyteller and a Texan who spent the past 2 decades studying courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy. So if you want to know more about Brene Brown, check out her website or look at some of her other past books. We've gone through a lot of her books, and that's why we knew that this would be really good material to dive in. So let's just start.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Here we go.
Yeah.
So emotions.
Emotions. I think that's how she really starts the book. We have to really think about what emotions are.
Right.
And kind of the impact that they have in our life.
It's really hard to define if you think about emotions, because one of the things that she finds out in the study and in her research is that people had 3 emotions.
Right.
In the research study that she started, there were 3 that came up, and it was happy, mad, and sad.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's awful to think that we just live in a 3 emotion world, and that's really not real.
Yeah.
And we see that all the time.
Yeah,
right?
if you think about just all the events that happen in our lives on a day-to-day basis, like, I don't know if I can put everything that happens and how I react to it in those 3 categories.
Absolutely.
I think there's just a surplus of things happening and a surplus of like ways that we react to these events in our lives, that we just need a deeper and like bigger vocabulary for emotion.
Absolutely. And so it's really about how we experience those feelings, like where we are in the moment and how we experience those feelings. And what's so interesting in her research in the introduction of this book is you're going to see that what she not only found was that it wasn't just 3, it was a massive amount. I think it was like 80, it was 80 plus emotions that we experience on a daily basis. We're going to look at question number 1 in our workbook. Do you want to read that question,
Yeah,
Jack?
let's read it. Let's see. All right. Do you think you are / were taught to ignore problems in your family? Maybe not explicitly, but subtly taught through behavior. Name one specific problem that was ignored, and what behavior made it seem taboo to discuss the problem? You know, I think that question hits it like right on the head.
Yeah.
You know, just when you're talking about emotions and everything, you know, were you taught to ignore these things? And you know, as I wrestled with this question, you know, growing up, you know, I'm still growing up. I'm only 27, if you don't know that. You know, I'm still in like I'm still in the part of my life where I'm still like finding my identity and processing everything that's happened in my life. And you know, as I think about my family and when I was being raised, we were your typical white middle class family in a small town. There was not a lot of traumatic events that happened in our life, and so I didn't really have any huge thing that really like shaped part of me. But when I think about just like the little things, like when I got into a fight with my sister or my parents told me something, I think about that. You know, I was taught. You know, my parents didn't go around telling me like you just need to ignore that. But I think I personally was taught to kind of subconsciously ignore the problems that I might have been having or we might have been having as a family.
And so you guys didn't spend a lot of time going through emotion or why or where that came from? And
No, I think, you know, when there was like, you know, a minor problem, like we were probably told like, yeah, you can't do that, or like you shouldn't do that anymore, but there wasn't a huge discussion around like, you know, why are you doing this, or like where did you learn this behavior from?
yeah.
And you know, it could have just been because it wasn't a huge problem and it just didn't need to have that
Right.
big of a discussion. But I just think about other problems that I've had, like growing up, like, you know, living through college and stuff, where I kind of just brush off problems and kind of ignore them.
Sure.
And I think that might have been brought over from when I was being raised.
Interesting. So for me, it's so 27, and so I'm 47, so we're exactly 20 years apart.
So
And what's interesting to hear you say things about finding your identity, I'm in an interesting place now where I'm refining my identity, I think. You know, having kids that are now starting to leave the nest, and my last, you know, kid is coming up to, we're planning college and he's a freshman and all the things. I feel like I'm doing this new work to figure out who I'm gonna be when they leave. And so it's almost like, again, being born again and a new identity. And I think for me, in terms of how I grew up, we definitely had a level of elephant in the room, and everybody knew the elephant was in the room,
Sure.
but nobody talked about the elephant in the room. And I think about my sisters. If you don't know that, I actually have 3 half sisters, and we spent a lot of time avoiding the fact that my dad was an alcoholic. We knew something was wrong, but we never really talked about it. And it was, again, the big elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we had some mental illness that went along with that.
Okay.
And unfortunately, because, you know, alcoholism and awareness and then mental health and then the abuse that we experienced in that circle, again, everybody knew that it was there, but nobody wanted to talk about it. And I think, I don't know if it was about a perception that if anybody looks in and, you know, they see things and things are clean and they're whitewashed,
Right.
you can't get under the skin and really look at what was going on.
Yeah. Do you think it was we don't know how to describe it and describe the emotions around it, or do you
For
think it was
sure, for my
just because it was
sisters
such a
and
big
I.
thing?
Yeah, and I guess because we were so young, you don't have the language at that point.
Right.
And I don't know if, you know, I don't know a lot about how my dad really grew up, to be completely honest. I knew my grandparents and I had great relationships with them for the most part, but I didn't know how my dad's parents and how they parented his brother and his sister as well.
Okay.
And I would probably guess that it was a lot like what you said, that maybe there weren't big problems in their life when they were children, but you definitely just didn't have them. Things were, you had a perception of the way things looked. And so I don't know if that aided, you know, the fact that we
Sure.
just didn't talk about things as a family and we didn't discuss problems, and we definitely didn't discuss, you know, dad's problem. But I'm sure we didn't, as kids, really have the language to say, what's
Sure.
going on with, all we could say was what's going on with
Yeah.
dad. We
And
couldn't
so
define it.
Yeah, so you're not like saying it's anyone's fault that
Right.
that either you or I like didn't talk about these things. It's just
Right.
no one knows how to talk about these things because
Right.
no one has talked about them for ever.
Absolutely.
Really. So
And there was a statement that I heard I'm a podcast listener, and that's actually how we found Atlas of the Heart. And they talked about parenting in the way that if you come up an adult, if you are raised by emotionally unregulated parents, which of course my father was completely and totally emotionally unregulated,
yeah.
then you raise unregulated emotional children. Then they don't know how to process their emotions. So if we're not taught how to process or even
Yeah.
given visual examples of how to process anger, sadness, dealing with conflict inside of a family, how do we grow up as adults and then
Yeah.
pass that on to our kids or
Absolutely.
to the people in our circles?
And I think if you just think about it, the period of time that we're in right now and that we're kind of slowly coming out of the pandemic, so many things have happened in just like a nick of time.
Right.
And, we're going to be processing what has happened and the stuff that is, the events that have occurred
Absolutely.
for years. And if we don't really sit down and like address the problems and just address the whole situation, I think it could like create bigger issues in the future.
Absolutely. I think in time's going to tell, right? I mean,
Yep.
this stuff's going to keep unfolding, and we're going to, particularly as educators, what educators are seeing, how the kids spent all that time, particularly the littles, out of a classroom, and so now they're coming back just socially almost in agony because they
Yep.
don't know how to be in a classroom or be with other people. And that's just one example
Yeah.
of some of the issues that we've seen. And I think for us as adults, that social isolation and again, not being able to have conversations, and for we've heard a lot about just different domestic violence has kind of gotten bigger. We're seeing
Yeah.
that a little bit more.
Mental illness is
Yeah.
happening a lot.
And so that isolation, and again, not having the language or the ability to express those feelings and emotions and not deal with them in real time, makes this topic in this book so much more meaningful.
Absolutely.
All right, so in the book, Brene, she talks about mapping the human experience. And if you, we hope you get the book. If you need the book, we have copies of it here as well. She talks about mapping meaningful connection. And one of the things that she talks about in the book is being a map maker yourself. So actually mapping your experience to figure out how those experiences formed for you. So the where I am, the how did I get here from there, and how do I get there from here. And so those are some things that Brene really walks through that we're going to continue to walk through as we
Yeah.
go through this book, and the chapter by chapter
Yeah.
as we work it out together.
You have to really, I guess, think about like where you are as a person. You have to like really sit with yourself. Like I remember when I was first reading this book, it took me a little bit to just sit down and like think about who I am and think about, okay, who was I when I was 14 years old,
Yeah.
and how did I get from there to here, and what things contributed to like making me the person I am and the behaviors that I have and what I've decided to do with my life. And you have to think about like what will get you from right now to the future in 20 years from now.
Right.
And so you have to think about, and part of this book will be to really think about like the way your body reacts to problems, the way your thoughts react to problems, the way you physically react to
Absolutely.
different situations.
Absolutely. And for me, starting the book, I shared with Jack that it was really painful for me because not only did I sit in it and think about myself and kind of map that experience of, when the alcoholism started or when the abuse took place, but it also, I had to think about it through my kids' lens as well. And I could see, different aspects of Hunter's life and how the things that I went through and the behaviors that I learned, and not having the language to speak with her about those things formed some of the decisions and behaviors that she has gone through. And now at 47, trying to come alongside her and not only learn this myself, but to help her to relearn maybe some strategies for
Right.
how to handle her emotions and move those things around.
Absolutely.
Another thing that Brene says that we really thought was really important. I don't know if you want to read this or if you want me to, Jack.
Go
But
for it.
we felt like this really kind of summed up 3 major issues that we see about people. I don't want to say that we see about people. This is Brene's perspective, but that people will do almost anything to not feel pain, including causing pain and abusing power. Very few people can handle being held accountable without rationalizing, blaming, or shutting down. And without understanding how our feelings, thoughts, and behaviors work together, it's almost impossible to find our way back to ourselves and each other. And when we don't understand how our emotions shape our thoughts and decisions, we become disembodied from our own experiences and disconnected from each other.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think of like painful memories of stuff that had like happened in high school with like bullying and stuff like that, and how I didn't want to talk about it because I just felt like it would get worse. And
Right.
I have only recently started to be able to talk about it because I know that, as Jesus once says, the truth will set you free.
Right.
And so I think when we're able to really realize that, we feel pain, but the way that we can get rid of the pain is to really go through it.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a process though that we have to get to. I can't just tell you just need to talk about your pain and it'll go away.
Right.
You have to come to that
Right.
on your own terms, and you have to go
Right.
through it
Because
on your own terms.
we all do these learned coping mechanisms, right? Whether they're
Right.
good or bad. And we get to delve into that a lot more. But I can think about, times in my 20s where I just played complete avoidance. Or if I think about how I came to being in performing and how that gave me an escapism from my problems, and I could put
Right.
all that trauma away and just be on stage and not engage in it. So it's so interesting to see how all of those things have shaped my emotional status, how I handle emotion, the way I feel emotion physically, mentally. It's really a powerful thing to
Yeah.
put it all into perspective
Yeah.
and lay it out there on the table.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that we do at youth group is we have a lot of people just come share stories.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, and I think our hope and my hope is that students will see the different experiences that they have gone through, and that they can see that they're not alone, because more than likely someone in the room is experiencing the same thing or will
Right.
at some point. And so if other people can see that, there is a way to deal with the pain and there is a way to properly heal, then that can be comforting.
Absolutely.
I think. But the only way to do that is to walk through the pain, like walk through the shadow of the valley of death,
Right.
to get to the other side.
And it's vulnerable and scary.
It is.
It's so
No
scary.
one wants to do it.
Absolutely.
So.
So what Jack and I are hoping that will come out of this is that you'll be able to have some conversations internally with yourself, maybe with your family as a unit, maybe with your kids.
Yeah.
And this doesn't just have to be for parents. It can be for anybody. And we're a family in a church. And I think that emotional regulation and dealing with emotions is as much a part of being
Yeah,
a church family as it
absolutely.
is inside our own 4 walls at home. And so one of the things that we're going to lean into this week, because we're going to have a different action for you to take away every week. So Jack and I are going to lean into this. And this is actually the last page of the introduction in her book. And she says that we should do this. We need to understand how our emotions show up in our bodies and why. So the biology of our emotions. We need to get curious about how our families and communities shape our beliefs about the connection between our feelings, our thoughts, and our behavior. So our biography, again, like
Absolutely.
we've been talking about. To examine our go-to behaviors. So the behaviors that our emotions drive us to, and what causes that. And to recognize the context of what we're feeling or thinking, the what brought this on, the backstory. And we're going to dive into that this week together and on our own. And we hope that you're going to dive into that with us as well. And we'll give you some opportunities to respond to that if you are feeling so up to that.
Absolutely. And our hope and our outcome for you is, and I'm just going to read it right out of Brene's book. She says, the anchor we are searching for is connection, and it is internal. So we hope that you find connection in all of this that you're doing. It is to form meaningful connections with others. We must first connect with ourselves, but to do either, we must first establish a common understanding of the language of emotion and human experience. So just like Krista said, we hope that you will look at all of these 4 things that she just read, and that you will really look at yourself and look at your family and just look at the people around you and really establish a bigger emotional vocabulary so that you can really look at your life in a completely different way.
And we don't take for granted that this is easy work. This is hard work, and we're discovering that in real time. How much harder? I don't think we anticipated it to
Right. Yeah.
be as deep as we thought. But we really hope that you'll engage with the book. And again, if you need a copy of the book, we would be happy to supply you with a copy of the book. And you'll be able to access this. And again, we'll give you more opportunities to experience this together as a family if you'd like to do that as a church. And that's what we really hope the outcome will be. So can't wait to see you next Sunday when we explore these questions and chapter 1, and we really get into those emotions.
We're excited.
Okay,
All right.
thanks.